Well, hello there. Kumusta po kayo? And welcome to another edition of Paul de Guzman Presents Art. So that foreign language that you just heard is my native language of Tagalog, which is the official language of the Philippines. I think it's important that I mention that because I wanted to sort of like pay homage to my Filipino-Canadian heritage. And at the same time, because this channel is about contemporary art, I wanted to make sure that you understand that my points of view regarding art is balanced by sort of like two types of dialogue, and that dialogue kind of deals with the northern hemisphere dialogue as well as the global south. Because I was born in the Philippines and I lived there for almost 20 years, and but for the past close to 40 years now, I've been living here in North America, specifically here in Vancouver. So I just wanted to sort of like mention that my sort of like interpretations of contemporary art is kind of balanced by those two sort of like influences. Also, I just want to take a moment to mention that we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, also known as Vancouver. And in Vancouver, we are in the Yaletown district. And this district houses the Contemporary Art Gallery, which is actually a really interesting contemporary art gallery at 555 Nelson Street. Now, I've been covering a couple of shows here at the Contemporary Art Gallery because they've been coming up with some really interesting and challenging work. And if you're new to the channel and you don't know that this channel is about contemporary art, this is your way to actually go and run away. But if you stay, hopefully you will, perhaps you can learn something about how to sort of go inside a gallery and just be confident in terms of your interpretation of contemporary art. So today we're going to go and have a look at the work of Lotus L. Kang, who is an artist not from Vancouver. From what I've read, I believe she's actually living in two cities. I think she lives in England and also in Toronto. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure, but we're going to go inside and have a look at the work at 555 Nelson Street Contemporary Art Gallery. So just so you know, the gallery is actually open from Tuesday to Sunday from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. And it's free admission, so that's where we're going to go in. All right? And then after that, we're going to hang a left and have a look at the work. So the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to go and focus on a little didactic panel here that kind of explains a little bit about Lotus L. Kang's work. The one thing that I really enjoy about these didactic panels here at the Contemporary Art Gallery is that they're short and succinct. They tend not to be too overly didactic in terms of what you think of the work. And, you know, it's open for interpretation, is what I'm saying. So we're going to go and have a look. And first we're going to go and pan through the entire works. And as we go through, I'm just going to explain a little bit about what I found out from the artist talk yesterday that I attended. I was actually kind of fortunate to have attended the artist talk. Well, it's not really an artist talk. No, it's more like a talk by an artist. The artist actually isn't here, but they invited somebody to talk about the work. And when we were doing the walk around, the director curator Matthew Hyland was also present. So it was kind of nice to sort of have an interpretation by somebody else other than the artist, and also have a lot of other types of information verified by the director curator who was responsible for arranging this show. The first thing that you're going to find about the work is that it's something that is kind of navigational. And by that I mean you have these films, and these films are actually referred to by the artist as skins. And what are these skins? So these are actually photographic film that has been unfixed. What does that mean? That means that these will keep on evolving as time goes by. There is no fixed image to these, and the colors that you're seeing really has more to do with the film as material as it actually reacts to the environment. So you have this environment inside a gallery where there's some light coming through from the skylights. You also have the heat and the humidity, and also perhaps the temperature. So that all pretty much kind of manipulates, I guess is the word, or maybe influences these films. Because traditionally, when you're looking at this film right now, this specific film right now, you see the purple, kind of like the black purple, that is how it starts with, apparently. And as time goes by, it changes color depending on the humidity, temperature, and all sorts of different atmospheric circumstances, I suppose. These pieces started off in London, being hung in the artist studio. And as it travels through the world, because it's been installed in many different places, in different hemispheres as well, so that entire sense of traveling, the entire sort of like, I guess the stress of traveling, tends to affect these photographic film as well, or these skins, as the artist had mentioned them. And it's kind of interesting how how the artist refers to them as skin, because when you kind of like look at it, the skin is really more of a barrier. If you look at it, it's almost like our vapor barrier. It kind of like separates us, the innards of our human bodies, from the atmosphere or the different types of things that are outside. It's semi-permeable, and in a way you can sort of like look at these pieces in that sort of fashion because they're still affected by temperature and humidity and light. So these photographic films, or skins as the artist refers to them, is alive. And a lot of the things that you see in terms of like, for example, in this particular piece, you're looking at these sort of stains that you can sort of decipher, because apart from the studio and from the gallery, there was also a time when it was installed inside a greenhouse. Was it a greenhouse? Anyways, there was some sort of leak that happened, and it kind of leaked on some of these photographic films, and it kind of affected the entire color variance of all these photographs. I'm not even sure if I should even call them photographs, because they're photographic, but they're unfixed. So the duration of time with regards to these pieces is not set in stone, which is something that is kind of interesting to think about, because these pieces are also about time. Now, there's also some sculptures, which I'm going to show you, like here in the corner. I'm going to focus on this sculpture in the corner. See that sculpture? It's actually a glass sculpture of young mice. And from my reading of it anyways, I did mention that there's some sort of like nomadic essence to this entire installation. When you look at how the photographic film is actually installed, it tends to sort of manipulate your movement throughout the entire gallery. You can't just go through the film. You have to go around it in order to sort of traverse it. And in a sense, when you look at the essence or the significance of what mice are, they are, in a sense, nomadic. I'm going to go and focus on that again. There is this sort of like nomadic existence wherein they would go and scurry and have a look and look for food, and then they would go back to their nest, and they do the same thing over and over again. There's also a lot of these types of elements that are kind of like, in a way, ubiquitous to more of an Asian sensibility. Let me just explain what that means, because when you look at these, scattered around the gallery are these pieces of, I guess, sculptures made from aluminum. This particular one are aluminum anchovies, I think. Yeah, they're kind of like crunchy little fish. And then over here on top of a tatami mat are cabbage leaves made of aluminum as well. And then we're going to go over to another tatami mat over there. And this one has, I think these are actually just leaves of a tree. I'm not so sure. And there's also another sculpture, glass sculpture of mice over here. So the thing about it is that we're going to go focus on this piece as well, which is a tatami mat. But there's also this sort of installation of aluminum, I think, discs that are sort of in the form of a spine. And looking at the entire context of this show, because the artist is actually from Korea originally. Oh no, I'm sorry. Her parents are from Korea. And then she was, I think, first or second generation, I suppose. But when you're looking at the work, you have to sort of look at it from that sensibility of iconography in terms of the Korean sort of sensibility. The tatami mats serve a couple of purposes. One is that in its folded form, when we're looking at the form right over there, when you're looking at a tatami mat in its folded form, it tends to sort of suggest the geologic, sort of like time passing by. And when you're looking at the entire work, because of the photographic film that's unfixed, there's also this sense of time that tends to sort of like become this sensibility about the entire show. The tatami mat, it's probably kind of interesting to note, it's really more of a Japanese rather than a Korean sleeping arrangement. And you kind of wonder, what is a Japanese sort of tatami mat doing in a space that's kind of like dealing with Korean sort of identity? Well, it's one of those histories, especially during the Second World War, where a lot of women in Asia became sort of a comfort women for Japanese soldiers who were stationed outside of Japan. So there's that sense of quoting that past that deals with women's bodies and the history of war and the history of a lot of women who are still struggling with that history. And that kind of, I'm not going to go into that entire essence of Japanese Korean World War II history because it's still a very, very sensitive point to a lot of Korean women. Not just Korea, but there's also the entire incidents happened in the Philippines as well, in other parts of Asia and Southeast Asia. So there's this sculpture here as well with the tatami mat folded, and apparently there are some hidden photographs inside, and this vapor barrier sort of wrapping around the tatami mat is actually silicone, because there's a lot of works in the show that tend to sort of like use silicone as a material for, perhaps it's as a metaphor for skin, it's a metaphor for how the entire sense of this show is kind of always dealing with representations, what materials represent in a particular culture. I should also mention that on the ceiling are these girders Now these are steel girders, and they're used to actually anchor or hang the photographic film from. And when you look at that little area over there, there's a sculpture of a lotus root, I believe. And according to the documentation, it is made of bronze. So there's a lot of things to unpack in this entire show. And the show is on until January 7th, 2024. And as is in true Paul de Guzman fashion, we're going to go and have a look and see which one is my favorite film. I'm going to go over here because I really like how this sense of the stain is. Let's have a look here too. So hopefully you lasted this long, and if you did, you obviously liked the video, so might as well click the thumbs up button. Also, if it wouldn't be so imposing, I would like for you to consider subscribing to the channel. It's free, it's not gonna cost you any money, and it's more a matter for me to actually go and get some motivation and some engagement with contemporary art, not just here in Vancouver, but also elsewhere. And on that note, on that final note, I just want to say thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your attention. I will have some information about the show in the description area, as well as website links for the Contemporary Art Gallery, which is at 555 Nelson Street in Vancouver. And thank you again for your attention and for your engagement. And that's it. I'm out of here. Bye.